Welcome to ParaTruth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of ParaTruth Reborn. This is a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans and United Public Radio Network. My name's Justin.
And I'm Erik.
And today we are bringing on Daryl Marston. Sorry, I have to use my bifocals here on the show to discuss his book, The Horrors of the House of Wills. Daryl is a co-lead investigator on A&E's Ghost Hunters. He has led over 400 paranormal investigations of private homes and historical locations such as House of Wills. He hosts the popular podcast, The American Ghost Hunter Show, and co-owns the website Paranormal Warehouse, which reports on paranormal news. And without further ado, let's bring in Daryl Marston. Welcome to ParaTruth Reborn. How's it going?
Good. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, first question we usually ask pretty much anybody is, how did you get into the paranormal?
Oh, by complete accident.
Wow.
I was actually grew up in a haunted house, but I was so young I don't remember it. I was like 6 years old when we moved out of there. I just remember the stories my mom and my grandparents would tell me. But when I got into it was in 2005. I actually got invited to a Halloween haunted paranormal type thing at Fort Delaware, where it was like an actual tour for about like 2 hours. And my first time there, I actually I witnessed a half body apparition. That was my first time ever doing anything like that, and I was hooked. I saw this apparition, and some way somehow I wanted to try to recreate what I saw, and it was a rabbit. I just went down that rabbit hole and just kept going, and it led me to where I'm at today.
It's pretty awesome to accidentally fall into something that I'm sure you absolutely love too. So many people want to be doing that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I've been very blessed. This was not my career choice, and it just led me in that direction, man. And I've seen some crazy stuff. I've had a lot of great opportunities thrown at me, being on Ghost Hunters and, doing a couple other shows like Epic Haunts and doing the show I'm on now, My Haunted Manor USA. It's been a godsend, man. So I've been very blessed in this business.
For sure. Now, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are wondering, how exactly did you get involved with this Ghost Hunters?
Ghost Hunters found me. I had a podcast back in the from like 2015 to 2017, 2018. It was called the American Ghost Hunter Show. And it was doing it for the first year or two. It was like, you were starving with it. You didn't have a lot of viewers. And then it picked up traction and grew pretty quick. And I was getting, lots of viewers per episode, and Ghost Hunters actually reached out to me, the producers of Ghost Hunters. One night I'll never forget, I was just in the kitchen playing Nerf gun war with my son at the time, and my phone was ringing. It's about 7:00 at night, and it said could be somebody from LA or something like that. And I'm like, I don't know anybody in LA, and I just let it go to voicemail, and they left a message, and they didn't tell me it was Ghost Hunters at the time. They just said they wanted to interview me for a paranormal TV show. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I kind of played phone tag back and forth with them for a couple of days. And next thing I know, I was doing an interview with them on Zoom. Back then it was Skype, and doing some Skype interviews with them. And they were just running me through the ringer. And the next thing I know, they called me, wanted me to come out to LA and sign contracts. And there I was, man, and hit the road running.
Oh. Well, I think I can speak for both Erik and I. I think that was our dream when we first started down this road as well.
It's never too late, man. Never too late. I tell you, I was that's what got me out there podcasting. It really did. It put me in the spotlight because I was just doing a lot of like investigating with my team that I had at the time, just on the road, nothing serious. And I wanted to kind of pull back because I was spending the mortgage payments on investigating and traveling and stuff. So I was like, well, I'll pull back, but I want to stay in it. And so I got into podcasting. A buddy of mine said, you should do I didn't even know what podcast was at the time. This was like 2014, 2015. I was like, all right, let's try it. So we tried it. And like I said, it took a year or two before it actually grew. And it started doing very well. And that's where they found me, man. So it's never too late. Believe me.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we've been doing this since 2008. Podcasting, we were doing paranormal investigations, but even when we started, that's when the beginnings of podcasting was going on. And the reason we started doing podcasting is we would sit around the campfire just talking about cryptids and ghost hunting, ghosts and stuff like that. And then I'm like, there's got to be like an online radio or something like that for us to do a show. And just Googled it and podcasting popped up. I'm like, who knew?
Right.
There's a spot.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a wonderful platform, podcasting. And it's a lot easier these days. I mean, I started out. We were doing OBS and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. And you guys got StreamYard and stuff down. Like, because I go on a podcast, I just hit the link and I'm on there. Like back in the day with OBS, you'd have taken the Skype to back to OBS to this, that. Take 5 minutes just to set up to get one person on. It was crazy.
Yeah, we've been there too, but we haven't really done video until we started with United Public Radio Network. We had tried it off and on, and just trying to get presentable for the camera and all that.
Well, I tell you, I did. Yeah, I started out on YouTube video, and it was cool. And I went to a radio format. I had a radio station who reached out to me, and I did that for like 7 months, and I hated it, man. I literally freaking hated it. Like, it was all radio, and it was like very timed and like to the second, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm out. I had a contract with them. I said, look, guys, this is just not for me. And I rolled, and I went back to video because I love video where I can actually see the person I'm talking to. You can see their expressions. And that's what I loved about the whole video podcasting.
All right. Well, to get to why we have you on is your book, The Horrors of the House of Wells. What made you write this book?
It was actual experience I had. It was an investigation I did. To back it up a little bit, so I was investigating in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and a guy I knew who was a friend of mine was out there with me, and he was from Akron, Ohio, from the Cleveland area. And he's like, hey, you need to come out to Cleveland and check this place out called the House of Wills. And him and a couple other people were telling me all these stories about it. I was like, this place is too crazy to be true. There's no way that what they're saying is happening there. So, fast forward about a month later, I'm out there. Me and another guy go out there to investigate this location with 2 other people who were out there, who were part of our team at the time. And we went out there, and I tell you, this is the only location in all my years, almost 20 years doing this, where it's the only location that almost made me quit doing investigating altogether, just from what happened there and what followed me home. I've never had anything follow me home until that investigation. And it really played havoc on my life for about a good month to 6 weeks. It played havoc on my family's life too, as well. It was scary, man, because at that point, like, I thought I've seen everything until I ran into that place. And I started researching it and trying to figure out why I was having the experiences I was having. And everyone who had investigated that location, at least one person from each group had the same experiences I had, or worse, or less. And so I knew it wasn't just me. And over the years, after that investigation, I always got those softball questions like, what's the craziest place you ever did, blah blah blah. And I would always say the House of Wills. And it got to the point I would tell the story, and people were like, you need to write a book about this. And finally, during COVID, I actually sat down. I had a good 5 or 6 months of doing nothing, and wrote the book, and got it published. Yeah.
Wow. Like Justin and I are actually both from Cleveland. I'm currently living in Cleveland,
Okay.
and neither of us had actually even heard of the House of Wills.
What?
I know it's insane. You know, the big thing that we always hear is Franklin Castle, Franklin Castle, Franklin Castle.
Yeah.
That's the big
Franklin
thing
Castle.
here.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
so,
was just on Fox 4 out there about a year ago talking
Really?
about it. Yeah.
Okay.
They did in studio interview with me about the House of Wills. I drove out there, and the one is crazy because the one host from the show is an older guy. I can't remember his name. He actually used to work there back in the 80s as a mortician. That was his first job.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool. And he was like, "Yeah, that place is crazy, man."
That's awesome. That's so cool. Now the spirit or spirits that followed you home, would you consider them more of a darker entity, or were these more like trickster spirits?
It was very dark. It was a very dark experience. It's the only place that I can explain to people. They ask, like, what was it like going in there? What'd you feel? I was like, it's the only place that ever I've been in where it actually felt like a living organism, the actual building itself. It's funny because I was out there, I was doing a book signing in Cleveland about a year and a half ago, at a place called October. It's a store out there. And I had a couple cops stop by who actually worked that beat of East Cleveland, and they had read the book, and they're like, "Man," he said, "you're the only person who's ever nailed this place." He said, "We've been there a bunch of times for calls." He said, "We won't go in the building." And I said, "Yeah, man." It was cool seeing, two uniformed cops come to a book signing and were telling me their experiences there. And it's the only place I can explain that it felt like a living organism. And it felt like it wasn't so much it was so much haunted, but the building itself was an entity of its own. And it's so hard to explain unless you actually been in that building. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy because when I first got on Ghost Hunters, I was down in St. Augustine, Florida, and one of the DP of the show, they were doing some action shots with me, and he was kind of like shooting the shit. He was laying on the ground taking these pictures of me, and he's just asking questions like, "What's the craziest place I've ever been to?" And I told him, "The House of Wills," and he's like, he jumped up. He's like, "What'd you say?" I said, "The House of Wills." He said, "Dude, I've been there." I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, we went there and did a show with Ghost Brothers," and he was the DP of Ghost Brothers at the time. He said, "Dude, I'll never go back there." And then another producer chimed in who was across the street from us. He came over. He's like, "Did you say this guy Russ on Ghost Hunters?" He's like, "Did you see House of Wills?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, I'll never go back in that damn place." He's like, "Ever." He said, it's crazy to hear the stories like people tell you like, "Man, okay, I feel you'll vindicated," because like I felt like maybe it was just me, but it's not. It played havoc on me, man. It followed me home. It was very dark. I was very I'm a very upbeat person, like very energetic, and this whatever it did, man, it made me feel like I was almost like, I don't want to say suicidal, but like I'd given up, man, just given up on life. Like I saw like it start having an effect on my kids, my wife, and that's when I had to like step in and be like, all right, I got to do something about this. And I just started reaching out to people that I knew in the field that knew more than I did about something like this. And none of it really worked. I mean, some of it worked for a little bit, the whole saging and stuff like that, but quite honestly, it didn't work. And then I start, man, it just may sound corny, but I start praying, man. I start talking to God, Jesus. And that's the only thing that really helped. And it worked.
Ain't nothing corny about that.
Right.
Not in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we brought this up numerous times on the show because it's our claim to fame. We got the opportunity to investigate Jeffrey Dahmer's family home in Bath, Ohio, where he killed his first victim.
Well,
and I had the same thing happen. We had come back. I had dropped Erik off at his house because we lived in the same suburb. And so I got to my car and I was just like feeling weird, like something had to have followed me. And I'm like, I was just back into my faith again. Erik and I had kind of done that together. And I said, by the name of Jesus, you're not allowed to come with me. You're not allowed to come in my car. You're not allowed to come to my place. you need to be gone. And I audibly heard a voice say, "Goodbye, Justin." And it never happened before, never happened since then that something has followed me home when I do an investigation.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy, man. I feel the same way. Like, when I said his name, and I said, Lord Jesus Christ and Savior, that's when things just start. The next day, dude, it just started turning around for me. And things got a lot better. Like it's just like the sun started, shining, more, and it was crazy. It sounds crazy, but it happened, man. It was like whatever's there. I'm not gonna say, I don't like using the D word, demon, or anything like that, but whatever's
Right.
very, very, very dark. And if you guys are from the Cleveland area, if you ever heard of Eric Freeman, he's the one who owns the House of Wills, and Eric Freeman is into the dark arts. And he'll readily admit this. I've actually become friends with Eric Freeman. I don't knock the guy. He has his own belief system, and that's how I can explain him to people. He's a very analytical type of person. He's very straightforward. He's a stand-up guy. He's not a Christian. He's not. I don't know what he really believes in, but I do know he does worship Satan, and that's his prerogative, not mine. But I had to, when I wrote the book, I had to get permission from him to write the book because his name's a lot. He's in it a lot. And so yeah, it's that's one of the reasons why they think the location's so dark now, because I know people have investigated 20 years ago when it first shut down, and they said it wasn't as bad as it is to this day. And it got really bad after he purchased the property and he started doing rituals in the building, apparently.
Jeez. Wow. Yeah, we were, or maybe I was only on a network with Eric Freeman. I don't remember if he was on the other network we were on. So I do know the name, and he had a podcast at the time.
Okay.
But you mentioned in the book that this location changed you as a person, as a paranormal investigator. Tell us a little about that.
I think it humbled me. It really did. Going into this investigation, I'd been doing it probably for 9 or 10 years at that point, but I thought I'd seen it all. Okay, blah, blah, blah. You get some cool EVPs. You might see an apparition or something. But going into this, I'd never really ran into anything dark that I know of, and to have that happen, to see that true, that true evil, true darkness of an entity, it really changed my outlook on how to investigate. It humbled me as a human being, not just an investigator, but as a man, and it redirected me in a whole different direction as a person altogether, to kind of take more control of my life. And to, when I investigate these days, I'm all about it. I'm an observer. Like, I'll go in, I won't taunt, I won't do any of that stuff, and I always kind of preach against it. And I'll go in as a complete observer, and I just document the evidence we capture, and that's it. And I walk away from it. I don't allow any of that stuff into my life. I just don't, because I know what it can do to you as a person. How it can harm you, your family, and just destroy your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And we've heard stories left and right from people working in the field, who they taunt, and then they lose relationships. Things happen to their kids, it's their families. Like, people want to play, they want to toy around, and then they learn the hard way.
Yeah, people don't realize how real this is when you get into it. Like, when you delve into it, like, I've seen some crazy stuff, especially on Ghost Hunters, when we were, traveling and investigating some of these locations, like, that were really desolate and never been investigated. I've seen some crazy stuff, and it seems to me it's always when you take stuff that us living human beings do, the darker stuff, and bring it into these locations when things get really crazy, with rituals and sigils and things of that nature, and it really flips the location upside down. And I saw that quite a bit on the road, and it's crazy to see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's I want to jump back a little bit here before moving forward, but one thing that I find always interesting, and like, it's no surprise to me, I'm a born again Christian, but how often people invoke the name of Jesus, and how almost every single spirit obeys to that name,
of course,
backs off, and it's incredible to me, because I've known so many people who don't believe in God. They don't believe that even despite the evidence and the historical evidence, especially, they don't believe Jesus ever existed.
Right.
And yet, as soon as something dark shows up, they use his name. And
Yeah.
I'm like, Todd, that doesn't make sense to me. That like, come on, piece the puzzle together.
Yeah, you stop walking the fence. I mean, you're either in or you're not in. I mean,
Right, 100%.
Exactly.
Now, regarding the location, can you share with us some of the evidence that you caught and what you thought was the most fascinating or interesting to you?
Evidence of the location when we were there. There's a couple of videos. I don't know if they're still on YouTube or not. But we put them out there for people to watch. So there's one where you see where I feel like something attached itself to me. That's the first time I've ever had that happen. We were down in the basement area where they used to do the viewings, and they'd have the caskets laid out and stuff. And we're just doing an investigation. I think they were running a spirit box or something to that nature. And you got to remember, when we were in the building, it was July, so it was hot. There's no electricity in the building. It was a good 90 degrees in the building. So I'm standing there and I start feeling like ill to my stomach. I'm like, man, did I eat something? Like, was it, food poisoning? And it just came on out of nowhere. And next thing you know, I could see my breath. And like I said, it's 85, 90 degrees in this building. And I'm like thinking that I'm the only one who can see this. So I hold a flash up to my face. I'm like, guys, can you see my breath? And they're like, yeah, we can see your breath. And like, tried on everyone else. The other three people were there. You couldn't see theirs, but you could see mine. I said, something's not right. I got to get out of here. So I remember we walked up a flight of steps, and there's a video of me just standing on the stairs, kind of looking off into the distance. I at that point, I'd kind of lost time. I remember what I was doing, but I felt like I had no control over my body. And what I started calling it was, I felt like I was being puppeted. Mm-hmm. So I remember looking like toward a wall. I'm standing on the staircase, and they're like, the guy who's with me, he's filming me. He's kind of standing maybe 5 or 6 steps above me. And I always remember is yelling out, "Get off me." And as soon as I said that, this black ball of black anomaly kind of shot from my back and went into the wall next to me. And then I felt fine. This is on video. I felt fine. I was like, look, I got to go sit down for a little bit. So I go back up to our base camp we had set up, and I sat down for like 20 minutes, kind of regained my posture, and was talking about what just happened. And they said, yeah, dude, we saw this anomalous black thing shoot from your body, and it's on video. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy. So they showed me the video. I looked at it. I was like, yeah, that's pretty wild. And so later on that night, fast forward, we're in the auditorium type area of the building, which is a huge auditorium. It's a 2-story auditorium with like seats that are surrounding the top. We all at one point had lost track of time. Like it was like we lost almost 2 hours of time. It felt like 15 to 20 minutes. We were playing some classical type music and some like old basically music from the 20s, because that's like when it was supposedly a German social club back in the 20s, from the turn of the century, and before it ever became a funeral home. And we were playing this classic type music, German type music, and it felt like the room was spinning. And there was one point where we had 2 cameras set up, and you could see on both these cameras this black anomaly come out of the ground, and it was standing there. It was not far from where I was standing, right behind me. And eventually it just shot back into the ground. It looked like I can't even explain. It looked like a Grim Reaper is what it looked like. So that we had that on video as well. So that's some of the stuff that happened in the location. Besides all the craziness throughout the investigation, we were there for 13 hours. And I remember leaving the next morning. It was daylight, and it just felt like all the way to drive home, which I live in Delaware, and we drove straight back. It felt like someone and the guy who was with me too, he felt it too. It felt like someone was sitting in the back seat the whole time, and like both of us just kept turning around the whole ride, 8 hours almost, and just kept looking in the back seat. Like it felt like the presence of either a child or a female sitting in the back seat. I remember that. I mean, this is 10 years ago. So that's some of the stuff that we had happen to us there, besides, what happened after, where it played havoc on me at home for a good, month or so.
Right.
So Eric, should we tell him about our Grim Reaper moment.
The embarrassing moment. Yeah, if you want to.
So we were doing an investigation for a client. We were with another team. They had invited us to come along, and or we invited them to come along, one of the two. And we had gotten this shot, looked like a skull and a skeletal hand or a face. And years later, Erik reviews the evidence, and he's like, "Dude, that was a bush that they had in their office."
I mean, you figure this was like 2007 or so, 2008, I think, that we did this investigation. So the equipment that we had wasn't the best, and we had it on a computer. We let everybody look at it. We had the owner of the company that we were doing the investigation for look at it, and everybody agreed this looked like a skeletal face with a hood, wearing a hood. And it wasn't until I got my iMac like 5 years later, and I happened to come across the picture, and I was like, let me get a closer look at this. I was like, dude, that's a tree.
Right.
And somebody's like, dang.
It's funny because I just had that personally happened to me like about 2 weeks ago. So the location where we filmed My Haunted Manor, you said, we always have people who send us in like pictures of stuff that's happened to them while they were there. And we had a lady who was there back in 2020 who had taken a picture, or it was a video. Sorry, it was a video of her panning. And in the one room, it looked like there was a lady or a child standing in the one room with a blue dress on. And it was like almost like lit up. And like it was like very quick, maybe a 4-second video. And we're like, wow, man, that's pretty damn awesome. We need to try to recreate this. And we're sitting there, we're trying to recreate it. So we had the lady who actually came back. And her phone was from 2020. So it just goes to show how much phones have changed in 4 or 5 years. So we're using the phone and we recreate the whole scene, and come to find out it was basically, and it's still there in the one room, it was just an outline of like the decaying paint on the wall that made it look like this child or woman apparition. And we were able to recreate it perfectly, man. It was awesome. Like, oh wow, okay, that's pretty badass. I mean, I wish it was a child or apparition, but at the same time, it was pretty cool. We were able to recreate the whole thing perfectly.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the House of Wills, I'm sure you had plenty of equipment there. What kind of equipment were you using? Were you having like battery drains on cameras and stuff like that as well?
Not so much, to be honest with you. It was very old school. I mean, this is 10 years ago, so they were using a lot of REM pods, and we had a lot of static cams. We were running the cords and all that, so they weren't like, they weren't. We had like, we had a whole like area set up for us to. We had monitors and things of that nature, so it was like a 3-hour setup, and we didn't have a lot of battery drain, but we were having a lot of equipment just going off all night long. We had one, and I believe I put it in the book, where we saw a black mass walking down the hallway, and we had like 3-4 REM pods set up in this hallway, and as it passed each REM pod, it was setting them off. We saw that in real time. All 4 of us did. So it was very old school, the old school REM pods and things of that nature, K2 meters and stuff I really don't even use these days. I've changed my outlook on a lot of the equipment, because of the false contamination and things of that nature. It was an experience, and I don't think it was so much the equipment experience we had there, but just personal experiences, and not just personal, but all 4 of us were having these experiences at the same time. And then to go back and to interview people who've been there before even I was there, or after I was there, who had a lot of the same experiences that I did, with being like an attachment type thing, where it felt like one of them was being puppeted. And it seems like this location does that. It'll pick one person and it will attach to them and try to, use them at will or use their energy. And that's what it did to me.
Wow. And you seem like a pretty strong-willed person too. So I'm sure there's a lot of energy you could pull off of you.
Yeah, kind of what we saw. Like, if I kind of, it's funny you said, because I was trying to look at the people that I interviewed and how their standing is. Like, are they the leader of the group? Are they the alpha? What's the deal with them? And it was always like they would go after the strongest male or female in the group. And it's crazy. They went after quite a few females too. And I'm like, okay, so, and then I found out these females were the leaders of the group. It was like, it was almost trying to knock them down a peg or just use their energy, to try to, do whatever it's going to do. There was actually reports in there, people actually losing their minds and attacking people. I was able to talk to a few people about that, where, the one lady who was the caretaker of the building, there's a story about her, and we actually interviewed her, where it's in the book too, I believe, Patty, where she was actually there. She showed up one day just to check on the building. She hadn't been there in about a week or so and wanted to check on everything. She goes in the building, everything's locked up, and she's walking around, and all of a sudden she's walking up the staircase, and at the top of the one, she's on the one landing, and on the top landing, there's a guy standing there with an axe in his hand.
Oh,
And he just started, and all of a sudden she took off, and he just started chasing her through the building. She was able to get out to her car, if I remember the story correctly, get out to her car where she had her gun, because she usually carries, but that day she didn't have it on her. It was in her car. She got to her car. When she was able to get the gun out and swing around, he was gone. So she called the cops. Cops came. They cleared the building. They were in there for like 45 minutes to an hour. The building's huge. And they cleared the building, and the only thing they found was the actual axe. So yeah, there's all kinds of reports of stuff like that in the building. People just losing their minds.
Yeah, that's pretty horrifying.
It is,
sure.
especially when she's just walking through the building doing her job, and that's what she gets paid for. And this guy, all of a sudden, she just looks up, and there's a dude standing there with an axe at the top of the stairs. And he just started running for her, and she took off. Thank God she was able to get away from him.
It's crazy. I find it interesting that you said that this spirit would try to attach itself or draw the energy off of people who are more of the alpha type or leaders of the group. One of two reasons why, like either A, just that particular person has more energy and it draws off of that, or maybe it's trying to push the group away, the teams away. How better to do that than to cut off the head of the snake, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Take down the strongest first. The leader falls, the rest fall back.
Exactly.
So that's very intelligent and interesting.
Well, yeah, I kind of chalked it off. Like, we did an experiment on ghost hunters one time where, and this is after the House of Wills, where one of the things we found out, we were at a location in Texas, and there was basically this location, what Grant and I came up with was that there was a hierarchy. So there was spirits in this building that had kind of like came in. They were kind of squatting. This building had been vacant for 20 some years. New owners bought it. It was a hospital, and they were trying to refurbish it and turn it into like a bed and breakfast type deal. And so there was spirits in this building, and there was a hierarchy. It was like a village almost. And you had the top, spirit or two, whoever they were, and you had all these other basically pawns underneath them that did all the dirty work. And I feel like that's kind of like the same thing with the House of Wills. You have this one entity that's very dark and malevolent, and then you have all these other entities that might not be dark. They might just be people who passed away there, who loved that place and came back, but now they're under his control or her control. I feel like that's kind of what happened there. I feel like that's what's still going on in that building to this very day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because we had actually had a guest on several weeks ago, him and a woman that he was doing a documentary with. She brought up too that the hauntings that they were having in their home, it was her family home, had been in their family for a while, and same thing. She was a sensitive, I guess is the best term, because she wasn't like a practicing medium or anything, but she had made that same comment that there was this kind of alpha spirit, if you will, controlling the others.
Yeah, I feel like that's a thing in a lot of locations, especially these larger locations or places that are not inhabited by the living. You have these spirits who are just travelers, and they're looking for a place. Maybe they don't want to go to a house where people are living in, so they'll go to a vacant place, and then others show up, and they basically build this village for themselves. You have the leader. It's like anything in life. There's always going to be a leader, and whoever's below that leader. And And I think that's what happens in a lot of these locations. And you kind of see that when you're doing some of these larger locations, like a Waverly Hills or a Trans-Allegheny, where it always seems like there's one that's always like the badass, and then the others kind of follow and do the dirty work.
Right.
Hmm.
So in your experience, do you think that in those cases, those tend to be negative type hauntings, or is this kind of normal for most hauntings, even if it's
I think it leads more to the negative type stuff.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I mean, that's where I've seen it in my personal experiences. It's usually a negative location, and like I said, they don't have to be evil. They're just they're just negative people or negative entities with a dark past or whatever. And I think that's where you see a lot of that, especially like I said, in my experience over the years, that's what I've run into.
right?
So I appreciate that in the beginning of the book, you preface the entire book with you do not go into a location without permission. Now, have you come across that a lot, like going into other locations and they're like, yeah, I had somebody trespassing here and trying to do a paranormal investigation or something like that?
Yeah, you don't see it as much now as you used to, like maybe 5-10 years ago. A lot of the YouTube generation would always, you always see a lot of videos like that online. And you always get those stories from these owners, like, man, like especially like a prime example is Pennhurst. Like I've been to Pennhurst a dozen times because I've done a lot of stuff for them. And they always have they have a full-time security force there because they're always getting break-ins, people trying to break into the property and investigate or vandalize it or whatever. Mostly it's usually kids or people who are doing YouTube videos and TikTok and stuff like that. Waverly Hills, same thing. When I was filming at Waverly Hills, they have a full-time security force there, man, that just monitors cameras. There's cameras everywhere in that location, especially on the exterior. In the woods, and they watch everything because people try to break into these locations, and I'm very against that. I'm like, it's like, guys, I mean, you're basically breaking into someone's house. It's
Right.
You just don't do that. I mean, I don't care if it's a vacant property or not. Get permission like everyone else does. Reach out to somebody. Like if they don't give you permission, then you don't get permission. And it's just it's bad. It's bad for the business. It's bad for the people who do it the right way. And I'm very against it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the House of Wills, and perhaps, I guess really just any of the locations that you investigate, what type of prep did you put into the investigation prior to actually doing the investigation itself?
My thing is, especially back then, I was one of those people, I didn't like to do a lot of research because I didn't want it to be contaminated by what I found. And it still works for me a lot these days. I really don't like knowing a whole lot about a location that I've never been to because I feel like it contaminates any evidence you get because you can kind of use it and fall back on, especially if you don't know about it. So honestly, with House of Wills, I was just going off hearsay. I was going off the stories that people were telling me, and quite honestly, I didn't believe any of them. I was like, this is just it's people are over exaggerating this location. There's no way it's this dark and this scary, and these things are happening in this building. It's just this is like something out of a movie. I'm hearing these stories. When I went there and saw the truth and saw what this place did to you, and it's not so much what you see there. It's what it gets in your head. That's the crazy part about it. It knows your thoughts and it gets in your head, and you start seeing like visions of things that you don't want to see. And it wasn't just me; it was everybody. Like I would talk to these people, and they were like, "Man, the visions we would get there." And like the one guy, it's crazy. The one guy who went with us, Greg, he's in the book. He lives probably about 45 minutes outside of Cleveland, Akron, and he would find himself driving there in the middle of the night, just parking in the parking lot and staring at the building. He told me about this, and I'm like, man, what's going on with you, bro? I mean, you can't do this. And he's like, dude, I don't know, man. I'll just get up in the middle of the night and I'll drive there. And I'm like, dude, for one thing, you're in East Cleveland. It ain't the best part of town.
Facts.
And he's just like, he's like, man, I don't know. I hope he's better these days. And the last time I talked to him was about a year ago, and he seemed like he was doing better with it, and he wasn't going there like he was.
Yeah.
But he did that for a good year or so, man, that I know of, maybe longer.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's persuasion happening there, you know?
Yeah. It's
Like
not good.
that's not good at all.
No, I was worried. I was worried for him. I really was. And I always reach out to him like, dude, you cannot do this, whatever you're doing. He would say he wouldn't, but then I'd find out from someone else that he was there, just hanging out, and like, it's like, man, this you got to get help, bro. This ain't right.
Yeah. Yeah, and that did he ever say that he went to like a church or a priest or anything like that?
No, he's not a religious guy. Unfortunately, someday maybe he will be. He's a younger guy, so hopefully he gets to that point, and maybe he is at this point. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about a year, but yeah, I hope he gets the help he needs, and I hope at least he's not going there. And he said he wasn't, so I got to believe him on that. But I know with this place, because I would probably be the same way. Be honest with you, if I live closer, because that's what it had on me, man. It had this grip on me, and I think I explained it in the book where I feel like, to this very day, I left a part of me there and brought a part of it back with me to this very day. I always feel like I'm attached to that because the story always comes up. The House of Wills always comes up. People always ask me about it. And that's before I even wrote the book. I understand now because I wrote a book about it, but it was just like, and weird things would start happening around my house anytime I did a podcast about it and things of that nature. But these days it doesn't happen. But like I said, I do feel like it's almost imprinted on me.
Right. No, 100%. And like, I'm definitely gonna keep him in prayer. But like, I'm one who tends to be or can be persuaded somewhat by certain spirits. And I was in Savannah, Georgia, about 4 years ago now. And we did I was living there for like 3 or 4 months. I think I was there. But my sisters and we went on this tour, a ghost tour. And one of the last locations they took us to was a hangman's tree at the center of the township.
Okay.
And they had told us how there's this black entity, like there's this black spirit that would always hang around there. People would get really bad vibes from it. If they got near the tree, they would be followed home and negative things would happen. One person, I guess, touched a tree and that night got in a massive motorcycle accident. And so like they're telling us this story. And normally, any individual hearing that is going to back away from the tree.
Yeah.
But not me, like I feel this like pull and I go and I touch the tree. And like as soon as I touch it, my sister's like, stop, freaking out. What are you doing?
Right.
And for the next three or 4 days, just a lot of negative energy that kept following me around. Weird little things would happen that just, would affect in a bad way. And it's just like, dude, like, why'd I do that? And it's like, I can't tell you why. It's just, it happens sometimes.
Well, that's the investigator coming out at you, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to test it. Like, is this a true story? It's,
It's like they tell you, don't sit in that haunted chair over there. People have died. And like, what's the first thing you do? You sit in the damn chair.
100%. 100%.
Now, has any investigation even come close to this one in the years that you've been doing this?
Yeah, there has been since then. Anderson Hotel in Kentucky. That was another one. A lot of crazy experiences there. That's the place. And I was going to write a book about Anderson Hotel too. I just don't know if I want to, because I really don't want people going there. I know they closed down for a while and they reopened from what I heard about 2 years ago. It's the only place I've ever had hands laid on me where I actually got thrown about 6 foot across the room.
Holy cow.
That was crazy, where it bothered me so much that I had to go back there 2 months later to try to recreate what happened to me. And I couldn't get it to recreate, of course. Thank God. It was a totally different experience the second time I was there. But it was, once again, it's a location where a lot of people had passed away, unfortunately, from suicides and murder. It's a very seedy, like, $100-a-week hotel back in the 80s that closed down. And the guy who was running it, the caretaker, the management, was into Satanism, doing a lot of sigils and things of that nature, where you can actually go in that building, when we were there at least, and you could pull pictures off the wall and find sigils behind the pictures. So yeah, it was very dark location. On ghost hunters, I would say probably Clifton, Arizona was another one for me, not just for me, but for the whole crew. That's where we ran into some people, and I'm not knocking Clifton, Arizona. The people there are amazing. They're great. Actually, we're lifetime members of Chamber of Commerce. So I got a lot of great things to say about them, but there's a certain element there that did not want us there when we were filming the show. And we were there for 15 days, I believe it was. It was a whole town. And we'd actually gotten shot at. There was some people who were apparently, from what we understand, what we were told, there were people there who were practicing black magic. There were black witches. So yeah, if you watch that episode, that's where we actually got the tire shot out in the back of the SUV we were driving out of town one night. So places like that, yeah, they're the ones that really stand out to me.
Well, a little earlier in this interview, you had mentioned that your perspective on equipment is a little different nowadays. So what are some of the pieces that you tend to use the most, and how do you feel about primarily using one's five senses to investigate rather than actual like digital equipment?
I love it. I love going into a location without any equipment. I quite honestly, guys, and it's not knocking, but I hate equipment. I like a camera, just to kind of record what, to what's happening to me, or, to anyone who's there. Maybe an audio recorder, and that's it. I will use an EDI on occasion, but I don't like using any, like on our show, My Haunted Manor, USA, we allow the public to come in to investigate the location while we film them, and we allow them to use whatever they want. I mean, we're not closed off to that. But me personally, I do not like equipment. I just like going into a location and sitting there and feeling it, not asking any questions, maybe just kind of just listening. And that's when stuff starts happening.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion, and that's just me doing this for so long. I feel that that's what works for me best.
Oh, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think, and I think Erik will agree with this. So many people get tied up on, well, what equipment do we need? What can we get that's going to give us the best evidence and stuff like that? And I hate to say it, but you can go bankrupt with all of the equipment that they have now compared to when we first started.
Yeah. It started getting bad about 10, 15 years ago with everything. Expense wise, but I tell you, I'm glad I got away from all that, and I'm not in that trap anymore, buying crazy equipment that you use one time and you throw under your desk in your office, because I have a bunch of it, believe me. But it's just, I feel like the equipment is more for entertainment purposes than anything. Especially, people like the flashy lights and things of that nature, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a ghost, guys. Just because your cat ball goes off doesn't mean it's a ghost.
Right.
I'll let you believe whatever you want to believe. Yeah, you're a free thinking human being, but I can tell you right now, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of any of the equipment. I'm just not. Like I said, a good camera is all I need, and maybe a piece of audio equipment to record, like a good recorder or something, a Zoom or something, and I'm fine with that. That's all I need, just to document what happens.
Yeah. I mean, and I completely agree. We did a little ghost hunting 101, where we just talked about the various types of equipment, things you would do in a normal investigation. And the one thing that we very much spent pretty much an entire episode on is just how to use your own five senses to find and locate. Sorry, my cat's being a little weird. Get out of here, dude. How to find, or locate various spirits within an area. Like, how do you sense them? Because, a lot of people, they don't realize when they're going into these investigations that you can actually train yourself to pick up on the little nuances around you, to find things, using the corner of your eyes to try to help you see shadows that you normally wouldn't see if you were looking directly at it, or heightening your hearing and stuff like that. And I will say, like, when I'm sitting in a place that is supposedly haunted, it is a lot easier to pick up on those things and find some things happening when you're not paying attention to the equipment. It becomes so involved in the piece in our hand that we're not paying attention to our surroundings.
Right.
And I agree. I think a lot of it is really entertainment. I mean, the flashing lights and stuff look great on TV. It gets your hopes up that you're going to see something cool.
Right.
Almost more times than not, you're let down because like, oh, you just get a beep and then maybe a voice that says something, you know.
Too many
yeah,
people invest too much time into the equipment. I really see them like they're not really getting the experience, real experience from it. They're just too involved with watching a cat ball or a K2 or a REM pod. Guys, I mean, like you were saying, go in there with nothing. I tell people that all the time. Just go in there with no equipment. Just go in there and feel the location. Walk the location. Even if you just walk it and then sit somewhere and just listen and wait, and your body will react. If something's there, your body will tell you. With me, and it's different for everybody, but with me, I get really flush around my eyes. Like I start feeling like almost like I have a fever coming on almost. Like right before you get a bad cold. That's how I start feeling. Now, like, okay, something's going on here, especially with the darker stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about that too. Like with the darker stuff, I tend to get massive headaches. Start kind of subtle, and then it just grows and grows. The heavier it is.
Yep.
And it took some time, to like learn that that's what was happening. But yeah, it's crazy. Like I know some people who, you get the chills or, the little goosebumps or whatever, hair standing on the back of their neck.
Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting how various spirits will interact with.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. A lot of, you have a lot of your sensitives and your psychics and stuff like that. You'll see like an actual apparition or a vision or something that we're not seeing. But it's different for all of us. Like I said, that's how I get it. I mean, I'll get intuition sometimes, but that's about it. It's different for everybody how they pick up on it. But like put the equipment away. I mean, it's great. You want to use it every once in a while, but don't rely on it. Don't lean on it for everything.
Right.
It's funny you bring that up about it being different for everybody, because we had done a investigation at a bowling alley once, and I think this is where Erik was really impressed with my sensitivity compared to before. But I went down there and they were like, just tell us what you feel down here. And I honestly don't remember what I had said, but apparently I had said the exact same thing that a fully trained, I guess you can say, medium had blurted out exactly what I had said prior to me going in there.
Right. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I like that validation when you could do that. You can validate something you felt or you saw before a medium or a psychic comes in or after. I love that validation, especially if you can do it on like a recorder or a device where you can actually record it, camera or something. It's always really cool to kind of you put that together, and it's like you're building a storyline, you're building a narrative, you're building a case, and that's what we do on My Haunted Manor. We take this location, and you take all the folklore and all the hearsay and all that, and you kind of put it on the back burner. Like, okay, let's dissect that and figure out what's real here. And we do that with psychics, we do that with our own equipment, we do that with ourselves, and we film it 24/7, and that's what I love about that. Yeah.
All right, Daryl. Well, we know that you got to get going, so I wanted to give you a chance to tell everybody where they can find you, find the book. The mic's all yours.
Yeah, I mean, the book, guys, you can go on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It's in bookstores everywhere. The Horrors of the House of Wills. It's also on Llewellyn's website. With me, you can go check my new show out, My Haunted Manor USA. Go check that out. You can find me on. I do a lot on Instagram. I use Facebook a little bit, but that's where I'm usually at. At Daryl Marston Ghost Hunter. I got the blue check mark, so you can't miss me. And you can come check me out, guys. I've got a lot of really cool stuff coming. If you're ever in Columbia, Pennsylvania, please stop by. We have a very cool location out there called My Haunted Manor USA. We have a new location opening up in Jackson, California also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Daryl, thank you for coming on ParaTruth Reborn. I'm going to put you in limbo really quick so we can end the show, and we'll bring you back in just a second.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, folks, make sure you're checking out Daryl Marston and the book, The Horrors of the House of Wills. It was fascinating just to read through the different things that happened there, and getting to talk to Daryl as well was really cool. So I don't think we have any house
No.
cleaning stuff to do.
Nope.
So just make sure you're tuning in wherever you tune in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Again, this is a pre-recorded show for 107.7 FM New Orleans and United Public Radio Network. Until next week, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name's Justin.
And I'm Eric. Peace.